your past exists to instruct you, not imprison you. So how do we reflect upon our past without becoming trapped by it? For me, I've always hated thinking about my past. Whenever I'd make a mistake, my first instinct wasn't really to learn from it, and it was pretty much just to pretend it never happened. And when we run away from our past, or we run away from what we've done, we ignore like one of the best abilities we have as humans, which is metacognition, which is simply just thinking about your own thinking or reflecting upon your own thoughts. And obviously that can be super uncomfortable because it forces us to, confront who we were back when we made that decision or we did that certain thing. Like, have you ever replayed a conversation from years ago and you still felt embarrassed? Because I literally do that all the time. My wife does that all the time. Like, it's just something everyone does. It's almost inherent to the human condition. And that's why I say the problem isn't remembering your past or reflecting upon it. I think the problem is when you decide to live there and stay there and like fully engulf yourself in your thought and you overthink everything. So why do we struggle with reflection in general? I mean, the first kind of point I would make is that our brains naturally just avoid emotional pain. I mean, there's so many like victims in the past that have suffered like some traumatic thing and they tend to like black that out. They tend to like white it out in their brain and their memory. But it doesn't even have to be super traumatic or anything. It's really just that shame, it often convinces us that remembering is equivalent to suffering, which is not. But because of that, so many people just cope through that using distractions. I mean, obviously we have our phones. It's just endless doom scrolling on and on, TikTok, IG Reels, YouTube Shorts, or it's constant entertainment. It's having a TV show on because you can't go 5 minutes without any sort of noise in the background. But we're all just doing the coping with the same goal, which is to refuse to sit alone with our own thoughts. So we want to break through that. And we have to remember that reflection and rumination, they're not the same thing. Reflection is asking yourself, what can I learn about what I thought or what I did? And rumination is like sitting there and saying, why am I like this? Or how could I do that? And obviously one of those produces actual thought and wisdom, and the other creates paralysis for yourself. But I don't know, maybe that's why so many people either idolize the past or resent it. And I've been visiting the Old Testament all year, and one of the stories that like kind of brought me to this video was Lot's wife in Genesis. And she basically becomes a pillar of salt after disobeying God's command, which was to not look back at Sodom, as Sodom and Gomorrah are being destroyed by God. And even with God sending his angels telling Lot and his family this, his wife still looks back. She turns around and looks back at the city, and she turns into a pillar of salt. Now, becoming a pillar of salt, I don't know if that's metaphorically or, that's literally, because, the Bible can be literal or metaphorical depending on how you look at it. So in the Hebrew, whenever, the word looked back is said in the Bible, it kind of implies more than just like turning around, looking back, and she instantly turns into a pillar of salt, like, like Medusa or something. It conveys more like a, consideration or attention or attachment to the city that she's escaping, Sodom, which, if you don't know the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah were horrible cities that had all kinds of greed, lust, gluttony, all that was going on in the city, and that's why God tells them to leave and he's going to destroy it. But she turns around and she, like I said, she becomes like attached to what that city meant to her when the city was horrible. Like, why would she stay with that city? Why would she stick to it? Why would she feel attachment to that? And it's because God knew, like, that's just how humans are. We will linger in our past if we stick on it too long. We have to learn how to reflect. We have to learn how to discern what our past means instead of lingering upon it, right? As I've stated, the punishment for her wasn't because she simply looked back, right? It's because she refused to let go of that past. And sometimes we become monuments to chapters of our lives that God never intended us to keep living in. It's grace versus shame. The gospel, it acknowledges the past without leaving us trapped in it. However, we know humans are strange, very strange, peculiar, and even painful memories can feel safer than uncertain futures for us. We hold on and cling on to old identities of who we were, failed relationships that we admire for some reason, all the regrets that we had, the mistakes that we did, the guilt that we feel after those mistakes, and nostalgia. And we cling on to them because they're all familiar things. They're things that we've done and things we've seen and things we've heard before. And the future, it's unknown. So of course it's frightening for us. The devil you know feels safer than the future you don't. We tend to define ourselves by things that happened years ago. If there were mistakes, we tend to like say that I failed or I ruined everything, or I'm not that same person anymore. But who really benefits from believing that you'll never change? And in my belief, the person who benefits is the devil, of course, and those that wish to see you fall. So how do we apply ourselves when we are in reflection? And there's obviously two unhealthy responses, which is ignoring it because you'll never learn, and like I've said, living in it because you never grow, you never get past it. So the only action we should be taking when we reflect is to learn from it. And as the title says, your past is a teacher, it's not a home. Imagine your past as a classroom, right? And in a classroom, you don't move your bed into the classroom, right? You just visit it, and then you learn, and then you leave. Simple. And that's exactly what teachers are for. So that's how we should take our past. And that's why I love Christianity and the way it takes reflection, because really it's all about redemption. Throughout the scriptures, God consistently uses broken people. Moses, he killed an Egyptian before he leads Israel, right? And David, he committed adultery and he arranged for murders before writing many of the Psalms. And obviously Peter, as I've said in one of my previous videos, he denied Jesus 3 times before becoming an apostle. And then Paul as well, he persecuted Christians before becoming one of the apostles as well. And obviously none of them were defined forever by their worst moments. Their past became part of their testimonies, not the end of their stories. And a lot of us, we understand this. Like, this stuff is not new. I'm not creating a new way of thinking. This is very much something that we have all understood, but the way we've understood it has been wrong. Our past, it's not there to torture us. It's not there to define who we are, and it's not there to become our identity. It's there to instruct and educate us. And metacognition, it's not about reliving in yesterday. It's about understanding yesterday so that tomorrow can be different. So in finishing, your past is a teacher, not a home. Visit it often enough to learn the lesson, but never linger long enough to forget where you're going. So thank y'all for watching. As you can see, I'm over here playing Gears E-Day because the beta is out. So shout out Gears. But yeah, that's all I got. Thank y'all and God bless. Deuces.